It was a time when my world felt like it was falling apart. My grandmother, the matriarch of our family, was battling a severe illness in a hospital across the country. Being just 7 years old, the gravity of the situation wasn't entirely clear to me, but the somber whispers and hushed conversations among the grown-ups told me something was very wrong. Money was tight in our household, with my mother pregnant and my dad being the sole provider. So when news came that my grandma's condition had taken a sharp turn for the worse, it was decided that only my dad would make the trip to California to be by her side. I remember feeling a mixture of confusion and worry, not fully understanding why I couldn't go too. Days passed in a blur of waiting and uncertainty. Then, on that fateful day, the phone rang. My heart leaped with hope, but also a nagging sense of dread. It was my grandma's voice on the other end of the line, clear as day, expressing her love for each of us. I remember the warmth in her words, the comfort they brought in the midst of our collective anxiety. Hours later, another call shattered the fragile peace we had found. This time it was from family members, their voices heavy with sorrow as they relayed the news we had been dreading. My grandmother had passed away. But confusion soon turned to disbelief when we shared the earlier call we had received from her. According to everyone else, she had been unconscious, unresponsive in her hospital bed all day. The idea that she could have made that call, let alone spoken so clearly, seemed impossible. To this day, the mystery lingers like a ghostly presence in our memories. How did she manage to reach out to us from beyond? Was it a moment of divine intervention, a final gift from a beloved grandmother to her family? Or perhaps something more inexplicable, a whisper from the other side? We may never have the answers, but that call remains etched in our hearts as a bittersweet reminder of love transcending even the boundaries of life and death. It was one of those ordinary afternoons, the kind where the world seems to hum along in its usual rhythm. I had just finished classes for the day, the weight of textbooks replaced by the lightness of freedom as I embarked on the familiar trek home from college. The path was etched into my memory by now, a winding journey of about 2 miles that led from the bustling town center to the quieter outskirts where I lived. Everything started off as usual, the streets alive with the ebb and flow of people going about their day. But then, like a subtle shift in the wind, I began to feel it, that unmistakable prickling on the back of my neck, the sense of being watched. At first, I brushed it off as paranoia, the product of an overactive imagination. But as I walked on, the feeling grew stronger, more insistent. I couldn't shake the eerie sensation that every person I passed was casting their gaze upon me, their eyes following my every step. It was unnerving, to say the least. Even the drivers seemed to join in this bizarre spectacle, their heads turning to track my progress as they zoomed past. I vividly remember this one moment. As I approached an intersection, a car came barreling around a corner. But instead of focusing on the road ahead, the driver was leaning over, his eyes fixed on me with an intensity that sent a chill down my spine. With each passing moment, the feeling of being watched grew more pronounced, more oppressive. It was as though I had stumbled into some twisted stage play where I was the unwitting star. Every glance, every stare felt like a spotlight, casting me into a role I never auditioned for. As I crossed each street, I couldn't shake the unsettling notion that something was off-kilter in this otherwise ordinary day. It was as though the world around me had slipped into a surreal, almost surrealistic state. And amidst this bizarre theater of gazes, I couldn't help but wonder, was I the only one feeling this, or was I caught in some cosmic glitch? By the time I reached the sanctuary of my home, I was equal parts relieved and unnerved. The strange episode had lasted the entire way, a disconcerting journey through a world that seemed to be watching my every move. I didn't dare mention it to my family or friends, fearing their incredulous stares and dismissive chuckles. But deep down, the unsettling question lingered. Was it all just a figment of my imagination, or a glimpse into a reality stranger than fiction? It was one of those quiet afternoons at home, the kind where the sunlight filters through the curtains in golden hues, casting a warm glow over everything. I was back from college, enjoying the familiar comforts of home during the holidays. The house was peaceful, with just the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the floorboards. I had decided to whip up a quick snack in the kitchen, my stomach growling in anticipation. As I busied myself with the ingredients, the house seemed to settle into a tranquil rhythm around me. But then, out of nowhere, a strange feeling crept over me. It was that unsettling sensation of being watched, of unseen eyes following my every move. I paused, the knife in my hand hovering over the chopping board. Slowly, almost hesitantly, I glanced around the kitchen. That's when I noticed it. Every single curtain seemed to be drawn wide open, inviting the outside world into our private sanctuary. And outside, the world seemed to be watching me back. As I made my way through the house, that eerie feeling only intensified. It was as though the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. And then, just as I was about to dismiss it all as my imagination running wild, I heard it, the unmistakable sound of the front door opening and closing. "Hey bro, is that you?" I called out, expecting to hear my brother's familiar voice in response. But there was only silence. No footsteps, no reply. Just the echo of my own voice hanging in the air. I followed the shadowy figure that seemed to flit past the kitchen, my heart pounding in my chest. "Come on, don't be a jerk," I half joked, assuming my brother was playing some sort of prank on me. But as I rounded the corner, my breath caught in my throat. There, disappearing into my brother's bedroom, was a distinct shadow. I called out again, louder this time, a mixture of annoyance and curiosity lacing my voice. With a determined stride, I pushed open the bedroom door, fully expecting to catch my brother red-handed. But the room was empty. Not a soul in sight, not even a whisper of movement. I stood there, frozen in disbelief, the hair on the back of my neck standing on end. What had I seen? Who or what had moved through the house with such eerie stealth? To this day, the memory sends shivers down my spine. I never did find an explanation for that mysterious shadow, that ghostly presence that seemed to inhabit our home for just a fleeting moment. And as I stood there, the house silent around me, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just brushed against something beyond the realm of the ordinary. Something that lingered in the shadows, watching, waiting. It was a seemingly normal evening, just like any other, when the strange occurrences began to unfold in my mother's apartment. I had been living there alone for some time, as my mother had moved in with a boyfriend, but kept the apartment for various reasons. At first, it was subtle. The door to my bedroom would creak open or shut of its own accord, the handle turning as if guided by an invisible hand. It started with just small movements, barely noticeable at first. But as the days passed, the activity escalated. Soon, the door would slam shut with a force that made my heart skip a beat. Or it would swing open with such speed that it seemed to defy the laws of physics. It happened at random intervals throughout the night, disrupting my sleep and leaving me feeling uneasy in my own home. I tried to rationalize it, to find a logical explanation for the phenomenon. Maybe it was the wind, I thought. So I closed all the windows, sealing the room from any outside influence. Yet still, the door continued its mysterious dance. One particularly unnerving night, a friend who was staying over witnessed the door's antics firsthand. We both sat there in disbelief as the handle turned on its own, the door swinging open and closed with an eerie precision. But the strangeness didn't end there. My friend also noticed something odd happening with the lamp in the room. It began to flicker on and off, not in a random malfunctioning way, but with a deliberate, almost intentional pattern. As if that wasn't enough, the most chilling experience came when I was lounging on the sofa one night, chatting with a friend over Skype. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the sofa begin to shift, as if being moved by an unseen force. I froze, unable to tear my gaze away as the sofa slid across the floor, inch by inch. Meanwhile, the door continued its relentless opening and closing, the handle twisting as if taunting me. It was as though some unseen presence was toying with me, testing the limits of my sanity. Throughout this ordeal, I also experienced bouts of sleep paralysis, complete with vivid visual and auditory hallucinations. It was a week of pure terror, filled with unexplained occurrences and an overwhelming sense of dread. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the activity ceased. The door remained still, the lamp stayed steady, and the sofa stayed put. It was as if whatever had been haunting the apartment had finally moved on, leaving behind a lingering sense of unease. To this day, I have no explanation for what happened during that strange and unsettling week. Was it a ghost? A poltergeist? or just a series of bizarre coincidences? I may never know, but one thing is for certain. I'll never forget the chilling events that unfolded in my mother's apartment. One eerie afternoon, I found myself at work, casually strolling past a room with a window in the door. As I glanced in, my eyes met a chilling sight: a woman standing in the room. Except at that moment, there were only 3 people in the entire building, and the other 2 were behind me in the office. I froze for a second, trying to process what I had just seen, before quickly backing up. Yet, when I gathered the courage to peer back into the room, it was empty. Utterly empty. This unnerving incident was just the beginning. Another coworker shared a bone-chilling encounter with me, recounting how she had been in the office just around the corner from that same mysterious room. Though she couldn't see the door, she witnessed the shadow of the door slowly opening and closing, despite being the only soul in the building. Naturally, she refused to investigate further. It was about an hour later when I arrived, and she asked me to check the door. Still locked tight. Over the course of my 3 years working there, each one of us had our own unsettling tales to tell. Voices echoing from empty rooms, phantom footsteps, and the distinct sensation of someone else's presence. There were times when we'd be in a room, engrossed in our tasks, only to suddenly feel as though someone had just entered, only to find ourselves utterly alone. One particular manager among us refused to entertain our stories, brushing off our shared experiences as mere imagination. One day, as we sat in the office, she scoffed and boldly declared, "If there's anything in here, prove it." A hushed tension fell over us, a mix of nerves, fear, and curiosity. Just as our manager was about to give that told-you-so look, something inexplicable happened. A loud thud echoed through the hallway as something was thrown into the corridor. We sat in stunned silence, our hearts pounding in our chests, before mustering the courage to investigate. Lo and behold, a book that had always rested on a nearby shelf near the front door now lay halfway down the hallway, as if tossed by an unseen force. Our manager, now visibly shaken, never spoke of the incident again. She resigned shortly after. As for me, I eventually left that job too. But the stories lingered on, passed down among new employees. Last I heard, the whispers of voices and the flicker of strange shadows still haunt that building, a testament to the eerie presence that dwells within its walls.